So, when Kalina and I got together at first, it was a little awkward as I assumed it would be, naturally, but once we started having conversation and got deeper into things, it became less awkward and a little bit more natural. When discussing our typical morning routine, our days started off by the same, by waking up, brushing our teeth, washing our faces, and getting our day started. Kalina informed me that her typical day in Shanghai, on the surface, was similar to her typical day in American life, except that she was in school for a lot longer than I was, what I learned. She was in school. Her school year lasted for 2 months longer than mine, and her days typically went from 7:30 until 5:30 p.m. And I started school at 8 a.m. and I typically ended at 2:50. I told her that I went to an all-girls high school and I hadn't had class with a male for 4 years before college. I also told Kalina that my top three fears and concerns when entering high school were not making the varsity tennis team as a freshman, because for such a long time I'd worked so hard at the sport, and especially in my community, it's a huge deal to make a varsity team as a freshman, and it was definitely a big thing about the culture was making a varsity sport. My second fear of high school was that I was not prepared for the jump from 8th grade to freshman year of high school. I thought the course load was going to be too much and so much different, and that I wouldn't be able to keep up, and that I ultimately would not do well. And the third fear of school, basically, fear that I've always had, was the exams and the standardized testing that came with school, especially high school. I've had a fear of standardized exams and anxiety when it comes to standardized exams, so that when I was jumping from 8th grade to high school, that was one of my fears. And these are the things that I told Kalina were my fears. So Kalina went to Shanghai High School, and she said that her top three fears, but she only gave me two because she said she only had two, not three, were getting into a good college. As even a first-year student in high school, she was concerned that she wouldn't get into the college that she wanted or be able to come to the States. She wanted to come to Michigan State because her older sister came here several years ago, and she wanted to follow in her sister's footsteps. Another fear that Kalina had was not doing well in school. At the Shanghai High School, they really prided and praised their students on being geniuses and innovative leaders. And for things that made her happy, it was doing well and being able to tell her parents that she was learning a lot in school, and of course, the typical girl thing, hanging out with her friends and shopping, which I also related to. I would agree that these things made me happy as well, but I also enjoyed being a part of a varsity sports team and participating in other high school extracurricular activities like clubs. But when I was talking with Kalina, she never discussed sports or extracurricular activities. And when I brought up sports, she said that they didn't really play them except for in her PE class. When it came to standardized testing, I saw that there was a huge difference. I had a tutor for 3 months on and off for the ACT, and it only talked about it a small amount in my high school classes. But I found out China and Shanghai specifically, at her school, they take this exam called the GLP, and it's an extremely hard test. The test basically determines everything that their future will hold and which college and whatnot they'll get into. It's comparable to the ACT, but when Kalina was explaining it to me, she said that they have classes dedicated in their high school for prep for this test, and if your family had more wealthy money, you could get a tutor, and that the exam favored your family if you had more wealth. She said that she studied for the test every day for 2 hours, while I, on the other hand, studied for the ACT maybe twice a week for a month, if that. Throughout the conversation, after talking with Kalina, I found it really interesting that she called the other students at her school geniuses. So I was really curious, and I ended up going online to her school website to see the genius, what it was like, kind of. And I saw that under pictures of students, they had things phrased like math genius, science genius, and I thought that was such a huge cultural difference because for my school, I know that they would call out on the website girls for their accolades and doing well on exams or getting a 36 on the ACT, but the word genius or leader, genius leader, was never involved. So I thought that was extremely different than the culture that I grew up in around my high school. Another huge difference I noticed about the schooling in general was China focuses more on the prep related to their Gaioki exam and doing well in that and how that exam basically determines your future. And yeah, that's comparable to our ACT, but I know that my curriculum in high school was not set up to the ACT curriculum, especially since I went to a private school. I talked a lot about religion and things like that, but Kalina informed me that in her school, their curriculum was set up on the Gaioki exam so that they will do well and ultimately have a successful future. But again, it was comparable to the ACT that I took, but it was completely different because the Gyoki exam determined their whole future, is what Kalina said. And I think I realized that our culture and education was a lot different. At first, I thought they were similar when we first started talking because we had our similar morning routines and kind of had the same interests. But once Kalina began to describe her in-depth day-to-day things at school and how she was at school for like 3 hours longer than I was at school in high school, and how everything was focused on this one exam, I realized that there was a huge disconnect between our two cultures and like what was focused on in the two education systems. And I think that what I picked up is that Shanghai and the school that she went to focuses a lot on academics, where I think that a lot of the schools in America focus on other things as well, like extracurriculars and sports and varsity sports, whereas Kalina didn't talk about any of that things or those being important to her in high school. So I think these were just some of the small insights that I learned from our hour-long conversation. I think if I would have had more time with her and gotten more in-depth, I would have even noticed more connections and how different the school's systems really are.